Hello and welcome to this special segment of our ShatterCast podcast segment edition. And those of you who are longtime viewers, you'll recognize our guest today, Andrew Lowen, the brain and designer and creative person behind the board game Deliverance, which is coming to Kickstarter very, very soon on June 8th. Derek and I had a chance to play this game with Andrew on Tabletop Simulator. We had a wonderful time doing that, and we just have some questions for Andrew about his upcoming project. But before we jump into that, Andrew, why don't you give us a quick download if people hadn't watched our last video? What is Deliverance about, and why did you decide to make this game? This game.
You got it. So Deliverance is a game of angels, demons, and the saints caught between. It's kind of the tagline, I don't know, that we use to describe it. But the shortest way I can describe what it actually is that it is a Christian fantasy dungeon crawl board game. So you play cooperatively with 1 to 4 players as angels that are elite warriors in the army of heaven. And you've been given this mission to go to a town called Fallbrook, which is in modern day Southern California. Curiously enough, also the town I live. And that town is absolutely rife with demonic activity. And you don't quite know why. So your mission is to investigate and figure out what's going on, what plot lay afoot here. You suspect that one of your former angelic brethren, who has since fallen to the darkness, who now leads the armies of darkness from the shadows, is leading from this little town. So it is your standing order to slay those demons where they stand and send them to the abyss. Ever since your victory on the cross, your orders changed. And so something strange is happening in this town, though. It seems as though the evils of the physical world, the human realm, is bleeding into the spiritual realm. So the sins of that world is now manifesting here, and you have to deal with them. So that so these darkness cards and other elements will come into play that are basically a direct influence on the spiritual realm from the physical world around you. And so the game takes course over so there are a couple of modes of play. One of them is a campaign. So the game you could kind of grow in power over a series of 14 missions and kind of experience the story of Deliverance, where you kind of reveal the ultimate plot, and there are some twists and turns along the way, and that's really fun. And then there's the version of the game that you can just bring to game night, sit down and have a what is called a skirmish experience. You know, the skirmish mode, you play 2 battles culminating in this epic fight with a fallen prince, and there are a bunch of different princes that are kind of serve as the bosses of the game, and there are depending on how many stretch goals we unlock, up to 9 angels that you can play that are thoroughly tested, and everybody knows their names, who they are, and that kind of thing. None of it's a surprise, but everyone wants to unlock them. And we have cool looking minis and all sorts of other things like that. So it's weird because it's a Christian game that you'll want to play. It's a fun one.
We could use
not an oxymoron,
a couple of those. Yeah, that would be nice. I know personally I am looking forward to a Christian game that I want to play.
Yeah. Yep. Doesn't preach to the preacher, you know. That's one thing about this game, is that it's not meant to like convert people on its own. We'll give it to, you know, John. John can use it as a tool and use it as a teaching tool.
So it's like kind of like a conversation starter or something to kind of break the ice about discussions around faith then?
Absolutely, yeah. It's you know, I would say, you know, I say this every once in a while, but half my email list is filled with pastors, priests, and evangelical Christians, and you know, every denomination of Christian. And then the other half is filled with, like, you know, I'll say non-Christians, you know, atheists and Satanists and every, you know, version of agnostic that you get. And they all like Deliverance because it's kind of a safe way to experience Christian lore, Christian fantasy lore. So in a way, the non-Christians treat it like, well, it's just like Greek mythology or something. I don't get offended when I play Greek mythology, and they use this rationale to say, I'd love to play angels and slay demons and do all that stuff. That sounds amazing. And it's a very safe way to kind of approach. And I really enjoy getting to sit down with these people and play, and just they're reading Bible verses, because Bible verses are thematic flavor text used very appropriately in the game, and they're praying and casting down darkness and things like that, and they're just having a blast. So I'm cool with that.
How does it feel to see people like playing the game after all this work that you've put into it, and not just like people who are playtesting it for you, but like reviewers and other people who have gotten their hands on it in various avenues?
It's just an amazing feeling, not only to have people play a thing that I made and enjoy a thing that I made, but it's I love that I get to spread the gospel through one of the most intimate ways that you can really share what it is around a dinner table. Having a meal is really intimate, but also playing a board game, I would argue, is equally as intimate. And because everybody of different ideologies and whatever gets together, and they're able to share something where they can have mutual enjoyment and enjoy each other. If you are eating food together, that's a lot of fun. But if you're playing a board game, especially cooperative, even if it's competitive, you're really able to kind of share an experience. And we're able to give people a tool to kind of help others feel safe to kind of approach and really ask the questions that they have wanted to ask. And so one of my favorite parts about the game, other than just playing it because it's really fun, I probably played 1,000 games of this, easily more now, and it's my favorite game on my shelf. I'm such a sucker to play for this game. I really like the theme and all that between this and Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth. I go back and forth all the time. So to experience those conversations with people, I'll have conversations like, people's theories on angels and what they are. And, I saw an angel once, and, they'll talk about these crazy experiences. And then I can just share my experiences. Like, I think I saw an angel before too. Here's this situation that happened to me. And everyone's, like, angels are really aliens from the planet Xenu and whatever. It's like, it's like, that's fun conversation that you don't normally get to have.
Now, the last time we had you on our podcast, I think you're still deciding how you're going to publish the game. And since then, you've made another company because you're not busy enough, Lowen Games, and decided to self-publish. So tell us a little bit about that. Why did you decide to go that route?
Yeah, so my intention with Deliverance was so it's been in development for 5 years. The genesis of the idea was 5 years ago. Come June 1st, it's 5 years. So my initial thought was, nobody can make a Christian game that's fun. If they could, they would have made it, and I would have it on my shelf. And therefore, I am going to do this. I'm a hardcore gamer, and I know what makes a fun game. So how hard could game design be? And the famous last words, right? But I believed that one of the challenges in creating a Christian game that I'm so very well familiar with now is that you can't do anything just because it's cool. You have to have a reason behind everything that you do. Otherwise, you get told you're going to hell unless you repent by so many people. You'll get told you're going to hell anyway by people that are misguided or whatever, maybe sometimes very well meaning. And so it's just a really hard road, because you're not just thinking about the gameplay and the theme and the mechanics and how it all works together and whatever. You're also thinking about this added dimension of, it's almost like working with an intellectual property like Lord of the Rings. You can't just make Legolas, you can't just give him pink hair. You can't just make him like a sword user and not a bow user. Like, there are rules in Lord of the Rings. You can't step outside of that. The elves live in the woods or whatever, right? You can't put them you know, you can't mix them up with dwarves. Elves don't live in Moria, right?
Yeah.
And so the same thing is true with the Bible. It is a lore base that is established, that has clear rules. You know, angels are always good, demons are always bad, Satan is the worst, and so on. And you have to treat the lore with reverence. And so, in that way, it's just like working with a secular IP where they can just say, nope, this isn't good. You're not allowed to publish unless you change this, this, and that. Except there really is nobody physical that can come to you and say, no, I will not allow you to publish this game, for it breaks these several, you know, passages in scripture, or it contradicts the several passages in scripture.
Mm.
And except for the holy most high God who sits on the throne of the universe. So it's very interesting to try to work and put together a game like this. But so anyway, back to what you had originally asked me, my conclusion was that nobody could make a game like this, and I had to. And so I thought, I will pay for the art. I'll do all of the game design. I'll do all the mechanics. I'll do all the marketing, and we'll wrap it up in a nice little pretty package for a publisher that is the right publisher. I'm sure I'll find one, and they will take it and they'll go make $1 billion with it. And I'll make a small royalty and hopefully get paid back for the things I made. But the idea is that a thing will exist that Christians can be proud of and whatnot. And so we did it, and we got offers from publishers. We actually had offers to partner in their company, and so I had offers to sell me equity in addition to a royalty. I had offers like up to 50% of a company. I had offers for a small percentage of a company with a royalty. I had offers for 15% of sales, which is quite high for a board game. But because I did all of the art and that kind of thing, they didn't have that expense nor that risk. I did all the marketing, and so that was a really good deal. And then I had standard deals from other publishers that were like 7% of whatever is sold. That's kind of what we would get. And we ended up turning all of it down and starting our own publishing company. And it came down to one of two things. One was the control over so being the final decision maker in several different areas, but generally I knew that if so my I'll just say my brand of theology, I felt like if somebody decided to take the game and then just say, we're just going to add like a demon that's a good guy and you're working with him, he might not be a really good guy, or maybe, hey, we'll make an angel a bad guy. Maybe Gabriel goes to the dark side, and that type of thing. I have to have the final say on if that will work or not. But if it's another publisher that owns the game and is paying me for it, I'll feel like it's blood money. If I make $1 million or $10 million off this game, like if I was Richard Garfield and I made a bunch of money off of Magic, great. But if I'm doing it, with like some corrupted version of what people think will be Christianity, then I feel like that's blood money, So I thought, okay, I have to have that control, or I have to trust somebody wholly to manage that. And it ended up that just in each of our interactions, there were always each interaction, I felt like there were certain things. In some cases, actually, people wanted to make the game more about the humans than the angels, which I thought was a problem because in essence, they were trying to make the witnessing the gospel preaching more overt. And it's like, all right, well, instead of angels, why don't we play humans? And we will defeat the angels by praying against them and by holding our Bibles and smacking them with the Bible, and by casting by helping our brothers get rid of their sin cards, stuff like that. It's like, that's not fun though. And so I needed to have final authority sometimes in the gameplay decisions, and I needed to have final authority sometimes in the kind of theological direction, the thematic direction. So so that kind of stopped us from working with some publishers. Then there was this other element, which was I paid a bunch of money for all of this art, and I didn't actually think about it, but I guess I would have to just turn over the art And I did more than just make a theme. I actually created an intellectual property. So the intellectual property I had to give rights to the intellectual property because there's value in this intellectual property now, which wasn't something originally intended, was a kind of a cool side effect. And now people know Deliverance and that kind of thing, and they think about more than just banjos and river rafting. They think about angels slaying demons and spiritual warfare and all of that. And it became another thing that needed to be considered, at least. So it was never a deal breaker to hand over the art, but I had to be compensated for the art that I handed over. So, one example, a traditional contract, you're going to get paid, let's say anywhere from 3 to 7% of the gross profit of a game after expenses. So I guess net profit after, of net sales. And so, that's something that certain publishers were like, well, no, we're just going to give you 7% because you're an unknown designer. You made this game and you did a lot of the work for us, but, you spent a bunch of money on art, but that's just, we might just not use the art. We might decide to do something else with it. And I thought, well, part of the challenge with this game was that you need to use my art because everyone else is going to screw it up. It's my thought is that everyone else is going to mess it up. So there are so many little elements. I mean, you give one of the female angels too much cleavage, that's a huge problem. I mean, I even have people telling me Michael the Archangel, who's shirtless, and Sardius Stonebender, who's shirtless, who looks awesome, by the way. They are causing me to stumble, because Michael's nipples are out. It's like, dude, I mean, there are legitimately Christians who couldn't play this game because of that. So if you give, and that's just, giving them credit and saying, hey, maybe they are completely telling the truth. And, I want to try to make sure that it's as accessible as possible. The original idea was to make a game where I didn't have to compromise on the gameplay, nor did I have to compromise on my faith. So we're not, using witchcraft to win the game or whatever. We're not, and I have nothing against people who love themes like Harry Potter, for example, but a lot of people had problems with that. I just wanted it to be accessible to those people. I've had conversations at conventions where I ask people, do you like dungeon crawlers? And they're like, nope, we don't bring those into our house. I'm like, why not? Like, because there's magic and evil and sorcery and demons and this and that. And I'm like, dude, you've got to come to my table right now. Come here and give me 5 minutes and tell me if this would go into your house. And every time they're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this exists. I can't wait to play, Yeah. And so it really kind of breaks the barriers for those people. And so anyway, I just knew that it had to be solid, the art had to be solid. I mean, even little things like runes that you write, like cool little etchings in swords and stuff. Like you could end up writing something that is that might mean something terrible in another language or whatever, right? And so or maybe a satanic symbol, like the mark of the beast, the three little numbers together, like boom boom boom. And it's just one of those things that you'll find actually a crazy amount of that happens on accident and sometimes on purpose in games. But I needed people to buy into the idea that this is trustworthy. You can actually let your guard down. If you find one single thing in the game that you're like, oh my goodness, the mark of the beast is right there on Michael's sword or whatever. It's like such a stupid little thing, but at the same time, that makes a Christian think, well, what else is that I didn't see before? And it just that trust is now breached, right? And so anyway, there were a lot of different reasons on that front. But so the art actually became a sticking point as well. They had to use the art. They had to compensate for the art because I didn't want to I didn't want to just give it for free as a good Samaritan and then not have any control over any of this. And so those were some of the sticking points. Now the final sticking point was actually, so I had two publishers that were willing to do these things for me. The one eventually was eliminated because of the control. In the end, it was like, hey, you're a 50-50 partner. and you know you have such and such responsibilities to the company, but we get the final decision on all the financial things and whatnot. I don't blame them for that, but it's the same problem that I have final decision on my game, but they have final decision on whether or not the game gets printed or where it goes into distribution or if it does or not. So we both have ways to kind of hold the like, I don't want you to print my game, it's not done yet, and then the other people will say, well, I'm not printing it unless this change is made. So it's just a different way to experience the same problem. And in the end, I found that the game just I had the vision, I have the business experience and all of that, and it just made sense for me to move forward. The final publisher, who I was really thought was going to take the game, decided that it was so much work for them that they weren't prepared to take on the amount of work that would be required in order to do it justice after it was released. So I, was like, okay, well, I guess that means that I have to do it. So I did.
There you go. And that's
Such a long answer.
No, it's a thorough answer, and I hope everyone who's watching recognizes that the thoroughness of that answer also speaks to the thoroughness that he put into this game. Artistically, creatively, entertainment value, theologically, like we've talked about this on camera and off camera. That I personally just really appreciate your intentionality with this game, and I think that it is a great product. And that being said, as we ramp up towards the Kickstarter launch, you've probably heard a lot of people say that. You've heard a lot of people getting really excited for it. And the day we're recording, you actually posted something in the Deliverance Facebook group that I really liked. And so I want to ask you about that and see if you could share a little bit of your heart, where you actually said to yourself that regardless of how things go in June, your identity is not in your game. Your identity is in Christ, which I think is so important. And I really appreciated that. And I wanted to see if you could unpack that for a second for our viewers. What does it mean that your identity is in Christ?
Yes. So it was a public service announcement to myself that I posted. And I just, one of the things that I expect is that, so I prepare for a number of outcomes. I prepare for the game to barely fund. I prepare for it to fund decently well. And I've prepared for it to overfund. I haven't prepared for it not to fund at all because I've worked so hard. We've had thousands of people that are excited and so on that I expect it will fund. But there are those three scenarios: the barely fund, the fund, let's say 300 to 500% of my goal, and then funding $1 million or, whatever that number is, just a high number. Maybe it gets way out of control, way out of, in a good way, and just does really well. And distributors want it. And I print, 20,000 units of this, and then everyone buys them, within the year or whatever. That scenario is a scenario that happens. I know, so I put a couple of things together that there are no other games like this as far as theme goes. Like, you can't even play Under Angels versus Demons game. There's one that recently hit Kickstarter called Angel Fury, made by a friend of mine, actually guys that made Terraforming Mars. But there's really, so just in the theme, maybe there are a few angels in other games, just, they're kind of just people, or like they're on, oh, you've got the Seraph, and that's like, you could play the Seraph or you could play Joan of Arc. Like, which one would you want? They're equal power. And so, there's really like kind of fantasy, full fantasy. But there's nothing like this out there. And then, so I believe that after the Kickstarter is over, that it can do very, very well. So all of that put together, I've been kind of hedging my bets against what I call catastrophic success. If the game does really well, I could totally turn into Nebuchadnezzar and be like, look at my kingdom, which I have built, by my hard work and my hands and my wisdom. And dude, that is so not true. It's not true at all. I'm just, I could get hit by a bus after the Kickstarter gets fulfilled, and you never know what you've got going on. So I love that, if we make 20,000 games or whatever, 100,000 games over the course of this game's lifetime, I hope even more, I don't know. But that means that about 120 to 150 Bible verses per game get into someone's house. Every single game that gets sold. I think that in the end is as much a motivator as bringing it to market, because I've been working so hard on it and it's a thing I love and all that. And but in the end, no matter how successful, how wealthy my company, when you die, you can't take it with you. You know, the Egyptian king. I actually just read this morning about Joseph. They actually Joseph and Jacob in Genesis chapter 50. If you look, the Egyptians embalmed Joseph and embalmed Jacob. They both became mummies and were put in sarcophagus coffins and whatnot. And I'm absolutely sure, based on the Egyptian custom, they were given riches and gold coins on their eyes and whatever, right? Because the Egyptians believed that you take all of your money with you. Well, it turns out that you just store it later for tomb robbers, because the tomb robbers got every last bit of King Tut's money and all that.
Yeah.
So I believe you don't take anything with you. And so the only things that you kind of, I guess, that last are, your legacy on earth. What happened as a result of your life here, and what reward did you earn, in the life thereafter because of it. And so my identity is in Jesus Christ, who saved me and just is my Lord and Savior. So I'm I work for heavenly reward. I work for a heavenly kingdom, and I think that it's just something I try to keep in mind. It's so easy for me to get. I have soon to be 6 children. I've got bills to pay and things to do, and Lord knows we need money, but at the same time, I just want to remember God will take care of me. God will provide for me, and I'll work as hard as I can to make all these things happen. I hope I die rich. That'd be nice, but cool.
You mentioned that that post was a PSA sort of for yourself. I'm sure several other people registered with it or it resonated with them, especially if they themselves are in the process of developing their own games. What advice, in addition to understanding that your identity is not in your game, what advice would you give people who are currently going through this process?
Number one, well, really, I guess 2 elements of advice that I feel like are very interconnected. The first one is, so Deliverance is my first game, the first game that I worked on. I have other designs and things like that, and I've helped a lot of people. I actually run a marketing company that helps other Kickstarters or other people go to Kickstarter, and we've worked on like 50 projects there. And so I get to see a lot of games, a lot of designers, a lot of, I run the local board game design chapter in San Diego, and there's a serious amount of design work that I've been a part of. And there are 2 mistakes that people make. Number one is that they have a really great idea and they write it down in a book and they think about it and they tinker around with cards and they fiddle around with, graphic design, and they pay money for art and they don't create a prototype that you can actually play. So it took me like 6 months to make my first prototype. And, part of it was just thinking through and working it out. And dude, that game was terrible. It was so awful. It was the worst game. I took, I have a War of the Ring right here, and I took all the minis out and used those as the angels and demons. And then I, used other elements from my game. We finished Pandemic Legacy season 1. So I took the cubes and everything. And it was awful. It was like, it took us 2.5 hours to finish 1 battle out of like 6, and we died. And it wasn't fun at all. It felt like you were pushing cubes and pieces on a board, not being angels fighting demons,
Oh no.
And it was really important because we needed to play immediately after we played. I spent a long time making every card, writing this card, and like, oh, we'll do the titles in blue, and then we'll make the armor in like black, and then we'll do the text in purple and whatever, and keywords are going to be highlighted. And dude, you better believe after that first game, all those things were obsolete, and I had to remake every single one. And dude, I got so cheap and quick. I'm like, dude, I can't do 50 chess pieces again. Like, I'm just writing the word chest. And we're making it a lot faster. So making a prototype and iterating on that prototype are so important for a good game design. And then in addition to that, you absolutely need to publicly play test the game. If it is not publicly available for people to criticize, then your game's never gonna reach its full potential at all. In fact, it's gonna be terrible. In all likelihood, it's gonna be really terrible. So you need to have other people you need to be willing to have all other people call your baby ugly. You better believe a lot of people called this game ugly. A lot of people said, "Oh, this is wrong," or "Oh, there's so much downtime," or "Oh, this game is so terrible," or "Oh, I only dealt 1 damage. That sucks." So many negative things that people have said over the years, and every single one of those things you have to filter through. Okay, sometimes all right, they're level 1 and they picked the wrong character. They clearly didn't want to play the healer. They wanted to play like the guy with the big sword, maybe, but also maybe dealing 1 damage sucks, and maybe we just need to make it better, and so there have been at least 5 times I can think of in the development of Deliverance that all the color drained from my face as somebody was talking to me and telling me the truth of why this game needs a change. And I knew what it was, and it's going to require so much work. Oh my goodness, the game has to be completely just practically scrapped and rebuilt. It's tearing the engine out of a car and rebuilding a new engine. And I mean, that is so important. You need to be able to also play, just sit as a wallflower, put your game out there on the table, put a sign that says, teach yourself this game. And you need to watch with a spyglass or something through a wall. And you need to have people say that don't realize they're trying to, that don't realize you're the designer. They can't ask you questions. They have to teach themselves how to play. They need to learn, they need to be able to teach themselves, and they need to be able to have fun with the box that you put in front of them without you actually teaching them how to play or whatever. It's actually, Derek, you have this experience. You played an earlier version of Deliverance, and you actually had to learn the game yourself based on the limited rules that somebody just kind of threw you this game, as learn it, by the way, you're teaching people. And it was an earlier iteration that just frankly wasn't nearly as good as the one that I have now, and nearly as smooth and all that. And that type of feedback is so important to get, where people aren't afraid to hurt your feelings, or they're like, this character really sucked. I wanted to do this one skill, and it always bugged me that I had to spend my courage to do the other thing to stay alive, but I really wanted to do the skill and I couldn't do it. I hate this game. People will say that. I'll never back this game. This is the dumbest game ever. Or the combat, I never changed a single plan, and I felt like it was basic, and it doesn't matter if this game is harder. It would just be harder and more boring. People will say things like that, and I've probably quoting people word for word based on my past experience, but that's so important as a game designer. So your baby's out there.
I was just gonna say, I think that's really good insight, and not everyone's going to be able to see your vision. And so trying to get across your vision, but also taking that feedback and kind of filter it, what is just someone being upset, or what's actually good constructive feedback, and how can I incorporate that in the game. And even your mission, me helping to play test, even in that, prototype, people were really excited about the theme, and it's cool to see how it's grown even from then to now. So but talking about that, it's about to hit Kickstarter. You've been on a long journey, so let's dive into that a little bit. 2 quick things to start us off, I guess. Why did you decide to go with Kickstarter to help kind of with some of the funding? And we all have a mutual friend, Jeff Grant, who loves to connect people. And we were talking earlier, behind you have some miniatures, and he was super excited about connections with that. So tell us a little bit about things like miniatures and stuff that you're adding to your game.
Cool. Yeah, and I can grab them and kind of show them up close. When I've tried this before, and when I put it up close enough to the camera, they never quite focus perfectly. So I'll showcase as well as I can. But first, why did I go to Kickstarter? Kickstarter, so the intent is to raise money so that we can actually manufacture the game. I know that I could find some angel investor that would just say, yeah, here's $50,000 or whatever to manufacture the game. But Kickstarter, the real reason that you would want to use Kickstarter is because it's a marketing platform.
Yep.
It will connect buyers to me, and people will basically pre-order the game, and I'll have 1,500 backers that or whatever it is, whatever number, 5,000, I don't know, that back the game, that basically pre-purchase. So that's huge. Not only is it 1,500 sales that you're making at, let's say, a 10% discount off of the retail price, but it is 1,500 evangelists that will love your game, or well, let's just say a high percentage of them would like the game, so that will tell others, that where others will be like, oh, I want that game too, and they'll buy it, right? So it's really kind of like the I call it like a megaphone. If you have ever heard somebody preaching in a park or something, they yell loud, but it's so much easier to talk if you've got a megaphone or some sort of amplifier, vocal amplifier, right? And so that's, or speakers, right? It's talking to a mic with speakers. That's kind of like what Kickstarter is that amplifier. And also I can prove to what is it, skeptical people, that this game has legs, that it's got, it's popular, people want this product. So distribution and retailers will take it seriously. They might laugh about, oh yeah, you got Deliverance banjos, I've heard lots of that. But when it makes $100,000 or whatever, they're going to be like, well, maybe I'm cool with the banjos. It's like, that was just an old movie. This game's new. They changed their tune. And so that's really what we're working to do, is kind of prove the concept. So yeah, let me grab these minis for you.
Yeah, definitely. Jeffrey,
Let's just grab a couple, show off some of my favorites. So we've got a bunch of different minis. This is actually probably my favorite miniature sculpt. It's Sardius Stonebender. He is basically, if you could see close, the detail on this is so amazing. But he's got like this arm that's like it's so his power is basically over volcanoes. Like he's like a living volcano. So he's got like flora on one arm, and then lava plates on the other here, and he looks really cool. Actually, if you could see his face, he looks like Seal singing "Kissed from a Rose." So and then this one right here is Shula. She is in a dancing pose. And one of the things, so we were talking about Jeff Grant. He referred me to a guy, his name's Russell Barton. And Russell has done a lot of work for Dungeons and Dragons. He's done a lot of 3D sculpting work for a lot of great companies. And he actually worked with me to design all these miniatures and the wings and everything. I mean, you can just like see the detail in the wings. Mm-hmm. Those are actually huge feathers. Mm-hmm. And this is a 32 millimeter miniature. So he just did such a great job getting all this detail. Also, something that one of the designer, or the painter was saying, is that all of the wings, like the swoop of the wing and the swoop of the dress, everything that Shula is doing is actually extremely on point. Like it looks like a realistic dynamic pose where she's got 3 doves on on her stand and everything like that, and just so it's such a beautiful character. So there are 9 of them. I actually have 8 of them that have been professionally painted. One is still in design. So we have angels of all different I'll say all different cultures, that because heaven is supposed to be filled with people of every tribe, nation, language, and tongue, right? Like, so Sardius represents Ethiopia. Shula is actually my sister-in-law, who is modeled after my sister-in-law, who's Native American, African American. Then we've got my brother, who's Greek, my wife is Greek. My buddy Brighton is Pacific Islander. I'm as American as it gets. I'm like, mix of Jew and, whatever. But the cultures are really fun. Michael is Brazilian. So the idea is that what we want to do with these characters is represent kind of all of heaven. So we know, by the way, that this is not what an angel really looks like. This is not what an angel looks like. In case you don't know, it's not what an angel looks like. This is a good-looking guy with wings.
Yeah, it's
with
not
two
terrifying
wings.
enough.
Yeah, this is Derek if he shaved his head, got some scars across his chest, gained volcano powers, and learn how to sing like
where are the
Seal.
multiple eyes and multiple...
Yeah, we need like a face on all four sides of its head. And...
yeah.
Are the miniatures an add-on? Are they a stretch goal? Or are they part of the base game?
So the way that it'll work is they'll all be part of the deluxe game, and we're going to play the game of stretch goals, which is kind of, it's like a marketing tactic in and of itself. But I can say that I priced the game out with all 9 miniatures, all 9 characters included in the game. So I do expect we'll knock down all the stretch goals for all the characters, but we're going to do the angels will have standees. So highly detailed cardboard with full art on both sides. And we'll do a really cool looking miniature that will be a stretch goal right after we unlock the character. So some of them, bless you, some of them will be stretch goals, and others will come in the game. But if you want the miniatures, you have to use go for the deluxe, which is $89.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, we've talked about some of the stretch goals, the miniatures, the game. We're all super excited about. How did you get to a point in the development of this game where you decided, okay, now is the right time for Kickstarter? How did you get to that point? What does that point look like? And now that you're kind of taking that leap, how does it feel?
Yeah. So the one of the things about working as a game designer, you can always make your game better and different and try this and try that. But at a certain point, you have to say, all right, this is good enough and it needs to go to market. Otherwise, you'll just keep, tweaking your game to making it more perfect, and it'll never go, no one else will ever play it. Right. And so there came a point where it was like, okay, we are ready. With the art is like, it's actually there's one character that our artist is working on, and other than that, we're 100% complete in the art. So the only thing that we have left, we do have the campaign book that needs to be developed and is in process, but it's done, right? And a year ago I would say, oh well, we have a bunch of angels and a bunch of map tiles and other things that we need to do, but now they're done, so we're ready. And the game, everybody loves it. It flows really nice. We've made so few, we've not made any so one of the things is like, when you're designing a game, if you can play your game 100 times and not make a major change to it, that's it's ready. A 100 or 200 times, if you can actually play your game a bunch and not be like, oh man, this system is broken, or oh, these prayer cards are way too strong, or that whatever it is, if you need to make like a major balance change or a major, all right, we need to like change the way the demons interact or change the way the map, I want to go from squares to hex tiles, and do something like that, which I tried. That is you need to play test more. But when it's ready, it's you've got the gameplay is fun, it feels thematically appropriate, and you feel like an angel fighting demons. That feeling is what will help you. That, and if you get through 100 games and it didn't need a change, then you're golden. So
yeah, I like
a major change.
That's good to know. Yeah, I like one of the things you said there early on. It reminded me of a saying I heard once. It's called "Getmo," and good enough to move on. And as a perfectionist, that is something I struggle with in many aspects of my life. Halting the editing process and saying this is good enough.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a good word and something to keep in mind for sure.
Definitely, and it's tough because there are going to be problems. You're going to have typos in your rule book. You're going to have a character who's overpowered with a certain build, a character that just isn't as good as everyone else, and that kind of thing. And you just have to release the game like that. And with a video game, you can just issue a patch. You can update it with a patch, right? But with a board game, it's like the patch is another print run, and that's a big difference. And they can't just like get the updated components. They have to buy a new game, in many cases. And so it's interesting. A lot of people want to balance their game perfectly, but in reality, you have to release it and it might not be perfectly balanced, and so we've worked hard to make sure that the game is balanced, that the game is fun and engaging and all of that. And I think that is part of the process. But yeah, too much can be, a real problem.
You talk a lot about process. What do you think God has taught you through this whole process that you've gone through with this game?
Yeah, God has absolutely used Deliverance as a tool to purify me and to kind of work things out from the inside. And one of the things that I've learned is so my wife had a dream. This was within the last week. I've never actually told anybody about this. Within the last week, and it was that she was and I actually asked her to write it down. She started telling me, and I'm like, dude, you have to write this down. This is like a crazy dream, write this down before you forget it. And so she said that she in her dream was Christine, the angel Christine, which actually was modeled after my wife, and that there were other angels there. There were like Sardius was walking there and others were walking there, and so was I was there, but I was Azrael, which is the character that was designed off of my likeness. I used to have long hair, but anyway, so the all the characters were walking on this kind of straight, we'll say like in the whole like desert Mount Sinai situation where everyone is walking along the flat ground, and they had a golden line behind them and then a blue line in front of them that marked their path and where they were supposed to go. And it was the golden line represented where they had traveled and how God had led them, because the golden line, God had been leading them, and the blue line was like God saying, okay, you walk this way. And for me, I actually wasn't walking with everyone else. I was walking up a mountain to an altar, and I was on my way back down from the top of the mountain from this altar. And behind me was a line that was brighter than everyone else. It was exceedingly bright gold. And this represented how I had followed the Holy Spirit and was also paving a way for others behind me to follow in this path that I had established. And then in front of me was no line at all. There was no line. So in the dream, my wife said, you need to listen to God. Every step you take, you need to listen to God in that moment to take the right step. Because if you do this in your own power, you're going to go in the wrong direction because you don't have a clear route. So, and that has been the story of Deliverance in my life, is that the development of Deliverance has been a step-by-step process where I almost feel like it was in heaven. God had the whole thing worked out and the plans that built up and whatnot. And he's just like, I'm going to give you a piece at a time, and I'm going to make you figure other pieces out. And you're going to have to rely on me in order to get this right. And even at the end, even now, and from the time that it fully gets fulfilled, and the things that I do in between now and then for maybe an expansion or whatever, if that's God's will, that we, which by the way, I think it is, but we have to, like, every day seek God, and everything seek God. I've sought the Lord's opinion on shipping partners, on using which post-campaign pledge manager should I use, various art pieces in the game, different weapons. I fought with God one time over including a bow in the game. Like, we should have a bow user. Every fantasy has a bow user, and God's like, no, dude. And I actually threw a tantrum over that. Funny story. Won't get into it, but I threw a tantrum, and he won. So we have no angel that uses a bow. So that's the way it is. So, but anyway, so that's really how God's used it in my life. He's just kind of used it to bring out pride You know, he's used it to bring out just a ton of different elements. My relationship with my wife and my priority of, you know, putting my wife above things that I want, finding out that certain things, you tend to hold on to certain things as idols in your life. Like for me, it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a 4-stripe brown belt. I'm going to get my black belt soon. And I was doing Jiu-Jitsu so much that, you know, I wanted my black belt. And it's like, you know, we have this Kickstarter coming up and a new baby coming and everything. And it's like, I just was letting my family suffer too much. And God was showing me, you need to do this, you need to do that. You have this media commitment. Just because you decided to go to jiu-jitsu does not mean that you can cancel that media commitment. Your family is suffering because of your choices. You poor leader, be better, you know? And it's just like, oh, I feel so convicted all the time, you know? It's like God is making me walk the right way. And when I choose the wrong path, he makes it clear that it's like, you chose poorly. You are leading people and that kind of, and so I feel like, you know, I stood up and said, here am I, send me. And God was like, okay, you know, here we go. And now I'm, you know, being sent. And it's like Jonah, you know, if I were to run, God would swallow me with a fish and spit me out on dry land and say, nope, you're going that way. Right. And so anyway, it's been quite a tool that God has used in my own life to humble me more than anything. You know, I have been humbled many times in my pride. I'm not a humble person. I'm a prideful person that has been humbled many times, you know? So anyway.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing it. And thanks for sharing about the dream that really spoke to me. I don't know about Hannah and Derek, but it was really powerful. So thank you. What you know, we've talked about, and you've mentioned even how in your email list you joked that half of the email list is pastors and priests and faith leaders, and the other half is agnostics, atheists, and even Satanists, right? So thinking about these two sort of pieces of the spectrum, what are you hoping each of those groups get out of the game? Is it something different? Is it the same thing? What does that look like to you? With Group A and Group B, what are you hoping that they enjoy or get from the game?
Yeah, you know what's been so interesting in the development of Deliverance is I have learned every wrong way to pitch it to people. And the wrong way to pitch it is to tell you what it is and tell you how you're going to have fun. And people are like, well, if I just wanted to play, you know, an angel that looked like me and you're giving me Michael the Archangel. Hannah, you're Michael. It's like, I don't like that, you know, or whatever. Anyway, it's the more I talk about it, the more I tell people about it, the more I find that I divide um, someone's opinion where they were on the fence, and then they're like, oh, I didn't like that or whatever. Um, what I have found that works best, and this has kind of been my process, is that I show them the game, I get them to the game itself, and let the game speak about itself to show them what it is as fast as I can. And what I've learned, and so to answer your question, I have observed and I listen to what these various groups of people say, and it tends to boil out into one of two things. The Christians tend to find what I call the Easter eggs, you know, the little hidden gems that they might care about, that they might be looking for. For example, every prayer card has a highly thematic flavor text on the back, which is a Bible verse that actually relates to what the card on the front says and does. And so a Christian will look and say, like, oh, I really need to pray. I need to heal though. And they'll look and read a card and it's like, you know, heal me, blah, 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 you know, in the Bible verse. And it's like, oh my goodness, I think I know what that card does, you know, and they notice things like that. And then, or, you know, various imagery and, you know, even using a, a pray action, you roll a dice to see if you cast down a darkness card and you may fail, but you will always get to draw a prayer card. So certain Christians will be like, wow, I can't believe it. Prayer is always answered, but you have to keep praying sometimes or whatever. It's cool to see. And then non-Christians tend to see more of the theme, like the angels and demons, and this feels really cool, and I feel so strong. I'm Michael the Archangel, or whatever. I'm Azrael, the Angel of Death, and they really like that theme. And there's nothing really that, and I don't want to say nothing because there are some things that I'll use the word carefully, could offend people, but there's nothing that condemns people. There's nothing that condemns a particular ideology. There's nothing that, speaks out against one, let's say, inner Christian argument, like, the demonic stronghold of Calvinism is out on the board. Oh no, everyone. There's nothing like that, right? Like, oh, the pre-tribulation rapture just happened. All the saints go up, It's like nothing like that.
Is that
So-
expansion content?
I was gonna say you just lost half your followers with those two statements, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah. So nothing like that in the game, which there's nothing like that to really detract. And so at the same time, there's nothing that says to a non-Christian person, you need to know more Bible if you want to do better or whatever. It's something that they tend to just read some of the Bible verses, and other things like that, and just feel like, yeah, that's pretty thematically appropriate. I was actually told by you mentioned Satanists, and I did earlier, but there were these guys from Germany that told me that they were card-carrying members of the Church of Satan, and that they loved this game, and they were media people, and they were going to share all about it and that kind of thing. And they said, you should really include more Bible verses on these cards, because it just seems like that would be like thematically awesome. And we were playing on Tabletop Simulator because they're in Germany. And I said, actually, and I showed them these prayer cards, and they were amazed and impressed that, and they were like, oh, wow, look at all these Bible verses. It would be really cool if they actually related to what was on the front of the card. And I was like, actually, and they were like, no way, so it's just very cool, and they don't take it as like the truth. The game doesn't ask you to believe in Jesus in order to play, but it uses this concept that is called the magic circle, where it's not like, actual magic or an actual circle, but it's like, okay, we're all coming to the table and we're going to play Marvel Champions, or X-Men, some other whatever. I am, Captain America, and Derek, you are Hawkeye, and, whatever, right? And so the idea is that I have a cool shield that I can throw, and I always hit people. It's just the way it works. It's like a homing beacon to someone's face. That's the way Captain America works. He never misses with his shield, right? And it bounces off stuff, and he's just like such a good shot all of a sudden. And that's like in the magic circle of the Marvel universe, Black Widow can scissor leg takedown anyone, even aliens, right? And that's just, that's normal. It's like, okay, there's a guy with a hammer, he's flying with his hammer, and he calls lightning. Okay. There's, right? And that's just normal. So he, so the magic circle concept is that we're going to accept certain rules as true for the purpose of playing this game. I am no longer Andrew. I am Azrael, the Angel of Death. And I am a good guy and this and that, right? And these are the rules of this universe. So that tends to be something that really causes people to let their guard down. Many times Christians use the magic circle concept in all of their fandoms that they enjoy. Speaking about Marvel, Thor is calling magic down from the heavens, right? And that would be, if we did that in real life, that's probably not a good thing. You're either an angel, a demon, Jesus himself, or you're, playing with toys or tools that you should not be, right? And but it's okay in the rules of this universe. That's normal. So that's the concept that really brings people together and makes the things in the game not even remotely offensive. So fun.
Is there anything else that you would like to hype about Kickstarter coming out, or just share about your game, or just any aspect, faith, or anything from it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. One of the things with the Kickstarter, we had people wanting hand painted miniatures. As soon as I was showing them, people were like, I want hand painted miniatures. So we actually have a very limited number of pledges called the Angel Investor and the Archangel Investor, that you can get hand painted miniatures. this is very expensive. So if people want it, it's $750 for the all-in plus hand-painted miniatures, and then $1,500 for all-in hand-painted miniatures. You're gonna get a signed prototype, a signed original art piece from Dan Maynard, and of course the all-in and everything like that. But you'll get the signed prototype shipped immediately after the Kickstarter, which is cool. So everyone wanted that so bad. Those might be sold out by day 1 or 2 of Kickstarter.
Yeah, these are professionally hand painted. I mean, this is a guy who does this for a living. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's literally this guy that painted this. I mean, it really is extremely
it's not just Andrew
detailed.
doing it in his basement.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that guy's gonna get like 50 sets of minis, and he's gonna have to paint all of them. It's gonna be great. But yeah. So that is a possibility, but the game is priced low enough that people can afford it. The base game is $59, and the deluxe edition with all of the gameplay content and the miniatures is $89. That you can add metal coins for an extra $20, so it's $109. You can add a really cool looking neoprene mat, which is if you want to go all in, which is $40 at $149. So there really is an option for everybody to access the game. And if you want that really next level of customization, or as many people were asking, they wanted to find a way to support this and get this into more places, that Angel or Archangel Investor Pledge is a great way to go to support this if you feel like it's a worthy cause more than just a game that you want. Yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens. If things go well, we'll be it'll be really exciting. But we have a Facebook group of over 2,000 people right now that's called Deliverance Game Insiders. And there's also, I guess we could probably, I'll share the Kickstarter link with you to the launch page, and then we'll do, you can visit the website at deliverancethegame.com, and you can learn all about it. You can see review videos and that kind of thing. Everyone's reviewing it very high. It currently has like 43 ratings on Board Game Geek. That it's rated a 9.3 out of 10. Yeah, so it's there you go. We're going to Kickstarter. It's the hype train is leaving the station. So.
Yes, indeed. Well, I know we're all feeling it. We're all super excited for you, Andrew. You already shared your online handles. That was going to be my last question. So you guys can check out, again, the website is deliverancethegame.com, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And you can also check out the Facebook group. It's Deliverance Insiders. Facebook
Deliverance
group.
Game Insiders.
Deliverance Game Insiders is the Facebook group. You can also find him on Kickstarter as well, Deliverance the Game. We are excited, Andrew, to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Derek and Hannah, as well, for being on this panel. And thank you for watching. As always, remember, we love you, but more importantly, God loves you. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah. Direction, the thematic direction. And so oh, hi River. Okay, hang on a second. I'm just gonna close this because I have a naked child right behind me. Go ahead.
Oh, to be a parent.
Yeah, I know. I'll mute myself,
take the
and then
time
I'll
you need.
help her along. All right.